A couple of you have noticed that I no longer have an ultrawide monitor on my desk, which is a good catch, and I recently made the switch from ultrawide monitors to a 4K 3840 by 2160 monitor, and this has been a really big change. And it's not that I didn't enjoy using an ultrawide monitor, it was absolutely awesome. I just wanted to try a different monitor. I just wanted to try a different resolution and give this 4K monitor a try. And I actually expected to want to go back to ultrawide after using 4K, but spoiler alert, 4K is dope. If you want some of the tech-themed posters you see around the office, check out mstechshop.com. The current live designs are Work Harder as inspired by Casey Neistat, Tech spelled out of tech, and a pair of headphones with a sound wave. Use the link in the description to go buy them, or don't, it's your money. Ever since LG sent me the 34UC97, which was a 34-inch ultra-wide curved monitor, that was the only monitor I used since I reviewed it, and if you want to see that review, you can check it out here. And when I wanted to make the change, I had to do some research and looked up other 4K monitors to look into, and I settled on this one from BenQ. It's 32 inches, it's 4K, it has really good colors, it's a professionally calibrated monitor, and it was under $1,000, and I'm going to give a full review of it soon, probably in about a week or so. It's 32 inches, and while it sounds smaller than 34 inches, it actually seems bigger since it isn't as wide as the other monitor. The reason I chose this specific monitor from BenQ is because it is calibrated for professional use and has a very impressive stand and was under $1,000. And for those of you that don't know, an ultrawide monitor has the 21:9 aspect ratio, and the one I'll be referencing is a 34-inch from corner to corner with a resolution of 3440 by 1440. A 4K, on the other hand, has a more typical 16:9 aspect ratio and a resolution of 3840 by 2160, so it does have a higher resolution, but it isn't as wide. And for this video, I'm going to talk about my personal usage scenarios because it gives my own personal experience and hands-on experience. Anyone could talk about this comparison theoretically, because obviously anything that would benefit from a wider form factor would be better on the ultrawide monitor. So I'm going to try to make this comparison a little bit more personal, and I'm going to let you know now that unfortunately I already sold the ultrawide monitor, so all the B-roll in this video will be of the 4K monitor instead. I use my computer for three main tasks: web browsing, video editing, and photo editing. And I don't game much on my computer anymore, but I will mention gaming later on in the video. Starting with web browsing, this includes things like watching MS Tech videos, doing schoolwork, procrastinating schoolwork, etc. And surprisingly, the 4K monitor performed just as well as a 21:9 monitor. Watching videos is actually better on the 4K monitor because almost all videos online are 16:9, so that video fills up the whole screen, and now I can watch 4K videos in the full native 4K resolution. Doing schoolwork and multitasking with two windows side by side is a little bit better on the ultrawide monitor since the windows seem less squished together, but it still totally works on a 4K monitor since there is enough resolution to have two full windows on either side. With web browsing, it's basically a tie, but video editing is a different story. And this makes sense because most video editing software takes advantage of a horizontal timeline. This is where I wish I still had the ultrawide monitor, but you can imagine what it would look like. With the wider aspect ratio, you would simply have more horizontal space for that editing timeline, which is pretty useful. And don't get me wrong, you can still completely edit a video on a 4K monitor perfectly fine. You're not going to have any issues. It's just a little bit better on an ultrawide monitor. And that's the story with everything I talk about in this video because they're both fantastic monitors. You can do anything on them and you will be happy, but each one has its own advantages. An ultrawide monitor is a little better at video editing, and a 4K monitor is a little better at photo editing. Every time I upload a video, I edit a thumbnail, and what I do is really simple in terms of actual photo editing, but the 4K monitor is a little better here since the pictures I'm editing have that same 16:9 aspect ratio. And again, it's not that you couldn't edit photos on an ultrawide monitor, it's just a little teeny bit better on a 4K monitor. And then comes gaming, and gaming is an interesting story. It really depends on the type of game you're playing. Certain games like shooters would benefit from an ultra-wide monitor because you have more peripheral vision so you can see a little bit more, similar to how you would use a surround setup. You just have more peripheral vision. But there are other games like MMOs and RPGs where a 4K monitor might be a little better, or a puzzle game, just because of the aspect ratio is just better for that type of game. It really depends on the game you're playing. So let's wrap this up. For web browsing, it's basically a tie. They both do it perfectly fine and very enjoyable. For video editing, an ultra-wide monitor is a little bit better because of that horizontal timeline. For photo editing, especially with 16:9 photos, you're going to have a little bit easier of a time on a 4K monitor. And for gaming, it really depends on the game or type of game that you're playing. And don't get me wrong, I love the ultrawide monitor, but surprisingly, I'm gonna be keeping the 4K monitor because at the end of the day, it's a higher resolution and I'm loving it. Thank you for watching, subscribe to see more content, and as always, stay classy.